Environmental Protection Agency Chief Scott Pruitt is facing a slew of ethics violations, but he still has his boss's support. The president firing off this tweet today. Do you believe that the fake news media is pushing hard on a story that I'm going to replace AG Jeff Sessions with EPA Chief Scott Pruitt, who is doing a great job but is totally under siege? Do people really believe this stuff? So much of the media is dishonest and corrupt. All of this coming a day after the president sang his praises on Air Force One.
I think that Scott has done a fantastic job. I think he's a fantastic person. I just left coal and energy country. They love Scott Pruitt. They feel very strongly about Scott Pruitt, and they love Scott Pruitt.
We can also tell, based on that interview there, that the president was taking in the first day of the Masters. Meanwhile, just a short time ago, the Wall Street Journal came out with this report. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly urged the president just last week to remove Pruitt from his post. And a few moments ago, before we came on the air here this afternoon, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi adding her voice to the chorus of folks who are calling for Pruitt's resignation, saying in part, quote, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt's tenure has been a part of the Trump administration's culture of corruption, cronyism, and incompetence. Pruitt must resign. Let's bring in Rick Tyler, Republican strategist, also MSNBC political analyst, and Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root, also an MSNBC contributor. Rick, let us remind our viewers and our Sirius satellite listeners of just a few of the issues that are plaguing Scott Pruitt. That $50 a night condo lease, his use of taxpayer dollars for private travel, his use of a special hiring authority, the spending on a soundproof phone booth. We just heard the president double down on his support for Pruitt. But at this point, do we think that Scott Pruitt can actually stay on even now, especially considering John Kelly seems to want him gone?
I think John Kelly's job is more in danger than Scott Pruitt. I think this is one of the cases where Donald Trump likes what Pruitt is doing at the EPA. I like a lot of the things that Pruitt is doing at the EPA, but the optics of these things really are inexcusable. But it looks like the president is going to weather this one out.
23 ethics issues, Jason. Huffington Post reporting that Scott Pruitt right now facing at least 23 ethics issues. Does this send a message in Washington that anyone is safe as long as they carry out the president's agenda?
Well, no, Craig, I actually think it delivers the even more important message, which is anyone is safe in Washington, D.C. if Donald Trump likes you. I mean, seriously, that's how his personal doctor can run the Veterans Association. If Donald Trump has a personal relationship with you, not just a tweet, I like Michael Flynn, but if he has a personal relationship with you, you're generally not going to get fired no matter what you do unless perhaps there's a domestic violence charge. Now, again, I also say this because this notion that he's going to keep Pruitt on because Pruitt is pursuing Trump's agenda with the EPA, Donald Trump doesn't really have an agenda with the EPA. He's not concerned about environmental protection issues or even pushing back regulations. Scott Pruitt is doing what many baseline Republicans want. So I think he's going to weather this storm. I don't think the president's going to do anything about it. And I think Jeff Sessions, for now, is probably safe because Scott Pruitt's going to keep his job.
Rick, Trey Gowdy, good South Carolina guy, South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy, he gives this interview to Vice. And he's highly critical of Washington partisanship. And he offers up a bit of a view of your party as well. Take a listen.
What do you make of the Republican Party in 2018?
The goal is to win.
That's all that the Republican Party cares about.
That's the goal. Goal is to win.
Is that it? Is that the goal, Rick? Just to win?
Yeah, I agree with Trey Gowdy. I'm laughing a little bit because Trey Gowdy and Vice is a little bit like oil and vinegar, but anyway, he gave the interview. But he's right. I mean, it is all about winning. I don't know what the overarching ideological motive is or the underlying governing principles of the agenda, as Jason just alluded to. It is about winning at all costs, and I think that has a very adverse effect on the party going forward, because if the party doesn't stand for anything, then it's hard to get people to stand with the party.
Jason, he also goes on this spiel during that interview about how he feels like the last 7 years of his professional life have been a bit of a waste, and he rails against Congress and partisanship. And here's the thing, Jason, it seems as if a lot of these lawmakers, when they decide it's time to retire, they decide to bash the partisanship and the bickering. that they were a part of their
Right.
entire political career. And all of a sudden they leave, it's like, oh, it was so awful. Can you believe what these guys do all day?
I was fascinated by the interview, and I've listened to it several times. Number one, this notion that it's surprising that people want to just win is strange. One of the things you learn early on in political science, all elected officials are single-minded seekers of re-election, right? That's your job. You can't do anything else unless you win. The Republican Party's been about that. The Democrats haven't managed to figure it out. But I would say if I were a constituent of Trey Gowdy, I would be livid. I want my money back. Because the guy basically said, I spent the last 7 years hanging out in golf courses, raising money, and causing the kind of rancor that I'm now going to turn around and say, well, I didn't really like it. I wasn't really happy with it. You're the individual who wasted hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars indirectly on Benghazi. You're the individual who was on the House Intelligence Committee that kept slipping out information and refusing to work with your Democratic colleagues. You can't turn around now and say, I cannot believe all the terrible things that were happening that I was directly responsible for. So again, I don't think this is surprising. I think you hear this from a lot of different Republicans, but I wish some of these people would take responsibility for what they did, or heck, just turn around and say, you know what, I'm proud of everything I did, happy I'm doing it, and I'm out, drop the mic.
Rick, President Trump, he said something yesterday that caught a lot of folks' attention, reiterating this controversial claim that he has made before about immigrant rape. Here it is.
Remember my opening remarks at Trump Tower when I opened? Everybody said, oh, he was so tough. And I used the word rape. And yesterday it came out where this journey coming up, women are raped at levels that nobody's ever seen before. They don't want to mention that.
Well, we haven't mentioned it, Rick Tyler, because it is patently false. There's absolutely no truth to it, according to reporters who are traveling with that caravan coming up from Honduras. Why does the president insist on whistling? Because we know what that is. We know when he says things like that, what he's doing. Why continue that?
I think the president, rightly or wrongly, was going back to what he thinks worked in the campaign, and it seems to me that the whole report of this caravan, which seemed to have stemmed from a Fox News interview that he happened to watch, triggered him to send the National Guard to the border, which they will have. They could provide support for sure, but they have no enforcement activity. This has been done by Barack Obama. It's been done by George W. Bush. It's nothing new, but that's not a way to run policy. Is to upend the National Guard, send them to the border because you saw something on the news. I mean, it doesn't seem to be particularly well thought out.
We'll leave it there. Rick Tyler, thank you. Jason Johnson, thanks to you as well. Enjoy your week.